pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. Secretary Gamero, will you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Lopez,
Here.
Commissioner Furdak,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Vice Chair Warner,
Here.
and Chair Pont.
Here. That takes us to public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to address the commission on items of interest to the public that are not listed on the agenda. Because of restrictions imposed by the Brown Act, the commission may not engage in discussion nor take action on matters not described on the agenda. Is there anyone here tonight who wishes to speak on something that's not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, that takes us to the consent calendar. Members of the commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. Does any member of the commission wish to pull the minutes, which is our only item on the consent calendar? Does any member of the public wish to pull that item? Seeing none. Before I ask for a motion, I'm just going to say I wasn't here, but I did listen to the video, so I can vote on it. So a motion would be appropriate.
I move to approve it. I'm sorry you could see me on the video, but that's okay. I move for approval of the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Secretary Gamero, will you tally the votes, please?
Vice Chair Warner,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Furdak,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
and Chair Pont.
Yes. Public hearings, we have two tonight. Let me do this. Is there anyone here that is here for item 5.2? Tentative parcel map on Kid Ranch Road? Well, let me put it this way. I've been told by staff that there's a delay. That item's been pulled. So if we take that one first and say that and get it done with, you can go ahead and leave if you care to. You're here for both. Okay. Well, in which case we might as well do item 5.2 anyway. Request for tentative parcel map approval to allow the existing 1.696 acre parcel to be subdivided into two individual parcels located at 710 Kid Ranch Road in the medium density residential zoning district. That item is being pulled this evening. Staff has requested we do so. There's been a little glitch in it, and it will be back at the next meeting or the meeting after that.
So
To be
just,
determined.
yeah, Director DeRosa, good evening, Planning Commission. So one thing I noticed, the applicant is not here in the audience, and in my communications with them yesterday, it sounded like they did want to say something, but it's, at your pleasure if you still want to move. Well, they've actually just arrived. So now I will continue with the update. Yes, that's correct. We consulted with the city attorney. We have an area in the zoning code that requires that the project bring back as a revision as a flag lot with a conditional use permit, so no action can be taken on it this evening. And so we would recommend we continue it to a date certain, so we don't have to renotice it, and they could actually package the design review with it. So that would, I think realistically, the earliest would be July 15th is what I would recommend the Planning Commission continue this item to.
So we need a vote to continue? I would imagine so, but we don't need to open it as a public hearing, correct?
That's at your discretion if you would like to open it. I know the applicant is here and would like to speak.
Applicant is here, okay.
May I ask a question about at least the schedule?
Sure.
Is July the earliest we could bring it back?
Yes, that would be, unless they want to do it in two steps and bring the tentative parcel map at the June 17th meeting and followed by the design review. We haven't seen the updated design review package yet, but you could ask them if they'd prefer the June date. If it's not ready, we can obviously continue it again.
Yeah, and I don't know whether we need to ask or not, but I certainly would hope you as staff would work with the applicant, and if they prefer an earlier date in a two-step process, then maybe we could accommodate that.
Well, could we speak? Because we're really having a hard time here.
A minute, then, please.
We were given direct instructions to do something, which we did, and we found out yesterday it's not going to work. And
Will you please, you're not being recorded, so your statements need to go down on record, so if you wait a few minutes, we'll get to it, all right? Thank you. All right. Then I suppose, since this one's going to be pretty short, let's go ahead and do it as a public hearing, and we can continue it, okay? In which case, I will open the public hearing, and we heard from the director that there's a glitch in statute. I don't think we need to hear that again, unless there's a good reason to. So in which case, I would invite the applicant to say something if they care to.
After our last planning commission hearing,
Name, please?
Katie McDonald.
Thank you.
After our last planning commission hearing, we talked to Maya about what we should do to prepare a subdivision, a subdivided lot. And she spoke to everybody in planning and in all the departments, public works. Everybody recommended to us that we subdivide the back lot with an easement. So that's what we did. 2 months and $25,000 later, while we've been waiting the whole time for a response from the city, we've gotten approval. We've gotten all these yeses. Chair Pont said, no, he disagrees with that. It needs to be a flag lot. And the flag lot doesn't work for a variety of reasons. So now we're kind of at an impasse, and we need to get some sort of clarity and stop spending $20,000 a month doing something that the next month you're going to change your position on. And basically, we found out 30 hours ago that the position has been changed. I was traveling. We have a lot going on. It's hard to sort of drop everything and run down here. But I think legally we can proceed under subsection or 17.16.040, and it's a shared driveway with an easement. I don't see why that doesn't work. And nobody's given us any legal reason why it hasn't, or it won't. So we've
Well,
just gotten.
let me see if I can help with this.
Okay.
One, we don't get the agenda with the application on it. We don't see them at the beginning. We see them just before we see them as the agenda is published. So we had this for a week. Okay? And frankly, this is my call. I read the agenda, I read the item, I read the section on flag lots, and said, this is not that, this is a flag lot. And our rules require a flag lot for the flag pole to be part of the lot in question. That was not done this way.
Right. It was not done that way because we got instructions not to do it that way.
Let me finish. Okay? So I did suggest that council may want to look at this. Council did look at this and agreed. This was incorrect. The flag pole should have been part of the lot from the get-go.
Okay, but this council's never worked with this city before. He's a very, very junior council. This is not his area of expertise. I'm not sure why he came in on this, but he's not someone who's dealt with the city. He's not one of the regular city council or city attorneys.
Well, let me put it this way. I am not an attorney, but I am a planner.
Okay.
Okay? I looked at this and said, it doesn't look right to me. So I started asking questions. Turned out they were probably the right questions, and the answer is no. Under our rules, this can't be done as an easement.
But everybody else in the planning department, public works, every other city department, other than you,
And
thinks that
the
it works
city
as an
attorney,
easement.
Ma'am,
well,
and the city attorney.
it contracts city attorney just for this issue.
Ma'am, still city attorney, okay? Mm-hmm. It's like a trump card.
Okay, can you give me the legal reasoning that it won't qualify for 17.16.040
I can tell you
subsection
what
A?
I said, okay? If you look at the definition for flag lot, right?
Yeah,
Your proposal meets the definition for flag lot.
okay,
Then you look under the rules for flag lot. And the rules for flag lot basically say that unless the lot was created before 1956 or before 1994, under different conditions, the flagpole has to be part of the lot. It can't be by easement.
okay. So the existing building would then encroach, it would be within 4 feet of the new property line if we make it a flag lot. It would be 3 feet from the property line. It needs to be 4 according to the ADU. So we can't do that. And the city hasn't built the rest of the frontage road, which would cost about $400,000. So we can't access the property from any other way without the city throwing down that money to build the road. So what do we do? Can we develop the property?
I'm sure you can.
Well, it's been 4 years.
And that, ma'am, is not my fault, not the city's fault. It is an error on staff's part, but at least we caught the error before you were standing in front of us with your plans in hand. And somebody said, can't do that.
Is it an error on staff's part?
Yes, ma'am.
Or is it an interpretation
Yes, ma'am.
that is being
Yes, ma'am.
subjectively?
Yes, ma'am. You apparently haven't read the section on flag lots.
I
Nor
have.
have you read the
Have
definition.
you read the section on shared driveways?
That's not the section I'm talking about. I'm talking about the section on flag lots.
Right. I'm
This is
saying
a
it also
flag lot.
qualifies under shared driveways
It's a flag lot, ma'am.
and a
And
shared driveway.
there's even under the flag lot provisions for 2 driveways to use the flag.
Right.
So-
But actually, they want us to develop more lots in the future, and the only access to ever develop more lots is from the shared driveway.
That's a different issue. And if they ever get developed, it will be a different issue.
Chair Pont, and I'm sorry, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to comment because I can understand the frustration of the applicant. I can also understand that we have to take our legal advice in terms of interpretation of what the code is. There can be efforts, obviously, to change the code. There can be efforts to try to provide a accommodation. What I'm hoping, this is why I mentioned the accelerated schedule, because I appreciate all the time you put into it as the applicant. But I think the staff is willing to work with you to try to work this out so that we get this on a near-term agenda as quickly as possible so you don't continue to suffer delays. And I think that's what Chair Pont is pointing to, is we do have specific requirements in our code, and we have lawyers who advise us on how to interpret those. And I hear you're kind of ad hominem attacking our lawyer. I'm a lawyer, you can attack me, but please don't attack our lawyers that are giving us legal advice on how to apply our code. Those are the lawyers we rely upon, no matter what you think about them. That said, please consider this as an opportunity to try to fix this, work with the staff, and let's get on with getting this to a final review and an approval or disapproval.
And if we do this right, cross our fingers again, that we do the subdivision, the CUP for the flag lot, and design review all at once, you won't lose any time. As it is now, let's say we could act tonight, okay? Let's say everything was copacetic, we could act tonight. You'd still have to do design review. So that would be coming back at a later meeting, probably no quicker than it would if you do them all at once. So you wouldn't be saving any time if we acted tonight.
I understand that, but we were here in January
And
We
in
did
January,
100% of what we were told by the city to do. It's now 30 hours before our meeting. We have all of these yeses in writing, approvals in writing, and 24 hours before our meeting, we say, well, you know, you did the wrong thing. Now you need to go spend.
The other way to have done that would have been, sure, we'll have the meeting, we'll be here tonight, and right here tonight, I would have asked the lawyer the same questions, would have gotten back the same answers, so you wouldn't have 30 hours notice, you would have 0. I mean, that was the other way to do it.
The other way to do this would be to not send us down the wrong road in the first place. Like we were sent down the wrong road 4 years ago, right? We're here because we continue to get bad advice.
Please, name, please.
Miles McDonald.
Thank you.
You know, we have been completely, wronged here multiple times, and this is the latest example of it. And now, here we are, relying on information given to us by the city attorney, who I know you don't want me to badmouth, but when we were here last time, we were talking about, some very specific advice that he, flip-flopped on that would have taken a year off of this progress, or off of this, process. So, we continue to get bad advice, rely on it, spend money, and then come here and be turned around again. So, I don't understand how you think that this is any kind of fair process at all.
I understand the frustration.
I don't think that you do. Every single person in the city that works, outside of this.
Oh, yes, I do. Because I got it a week ago. And it didn't take more than an hour before I said, this advice is incorrect according to our code.
According to your interpretation of that code.
Yes, and the attorney's interpretation of the code, correct. Not just mine. So I started asking questions because it didn't read properly to me. And that's just how the system, unfortunately, works. Staff does their work, then it comes up to the commission.
May I ask a question of staff?
Please.
So we've heard some comment about if we go in accordance with the code, would there need to be any other changes to the application?
Are you saying, make sure I understand the question?
There's a reference to setback issue, 4 feet, 3 feet.
I cannot answer that question because we have not been presented any updated plans to analyze that exactly what's being proposed, but we actually do have a meeting with their team tomorrow to talk about the strategy, what some of the challenges are, and what the next steps are. But we, and it's their choice if they want to do this in 2 steps, try and shoot for the June 17th meeting and then bring the design review in July. But I'm not comfortable
Pining at this time.
Without any drawings in front of me.
I just want to be sure that what we have back in front of the commission reflects also impacts on the rest of the project as proposed by the applicant, so we as a commission understand that it's not just the lot versus the easement, it's any other impacts on the overall project, so we're aware of that for whatever discretion we have.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So the one thing is, there's a 20-foot road right now that's an easement, and Chairman Pont wants it to be a road that
City
is part
attorney
of the back lot.
wants it to be part of the lot.
So what that does is the existing ADU on the front lot would be 3 feet away from the new property line, which is non-conforming. So if we could get support to keep a legal non-conforming use of that ADU, it's a foot away, it's a foot outside of the code, then
So
that would work.
let me just weigh in here. So there is no let me just be really clear. There's no action that can be taken by the Planning Commission tonight.
Correct.
No conditional approval, no conditional granting. So I really don't think This is getting into a technical conversation that I don't think is.
And I was not intending to get into a technical conversation or anything on the issue. I want to be sure that staff, and going back with the applicant, is very aware and looks at it, evaluates what happens to the overall proposal. And I think you said you will do that, and you'll start doing that tomorrow. That's all I wanted, was the kind of assurance that the concerns expressed will be part of that discussion.
Yeah, but it's not this isn't the forum to be
No,
asking
we're
those
not-
questions.
and
So, okay.
I'm not asking for any merits on those questions. I'm just asking for a process to be sure that's taken into account.
Now, technically, we could move on the item in front of us. We'd have to deny it, right? Because it doesn't meet code according to the city attorney. That would be an option. Yes.
So I don't know if this is very relevant. I've been a union construction worker for a long time, carpenter, built in Belvedere, Tiburon, and it's basically a rock you build mansions on, right? And $1 million to $10 million remodels. And there was restrictions, and when I saw a little bit about what you were trying to do as things change, there's a lot of people that would remodel and save existing structures, and they couldn't place things, or else if they tore it down, they could never build the same size. And I think what this is kind of doing, you're working with parameters, and things have changed, rules have changed. So even let's say it got to a point, and if we look and the parameters don't change, it would still not work. So I just want to also caution you that sometimes things change and you can't really move everything perfectly, even if you own the land, because of these restraints. And we got to follow code. And like I said, I think there's a lot of issues with that, because I was looking at that.
The project that we proposed 4 years ago totally met code, okay? And, the design that, the city has that we submitted is largely the same as it was 4 years ago on a new lot that will, again, meet code. So I understand what you're saying, but we've been in this process for so long that every time the code changes or a different attorney looks at it and, decides something else, our project suffers and our family suffers. So I hear what you're saying, but we're also playing an entirely rigged game where you guys just changed the rules.
That is exactly it. It's that we're given, do this, we do that. They say, nope, do this. Wait, we do that. Do this. Every couple years, every couple $100,000 of design and this and that later, do this. Wait. Do this. And so we are just constantly doing this.
I understand your frustration. On the other hand, you're really close to the end stage here, right?
We hope, but
I personally, now this is a personal opinion, don't see any real remaining showstoppers. This was, to me, off the get-go, clearly a flag lot, and I don't know why it wasn't treated like that.
we specifically emailed the city and said, should we do this as a flag lot or an easement?
I don't know.
They took 2
who
weeks
you
to investigate
emailed.
it
I
and came
don't
back
know
and said
how they
easement.
answered. I
With
don't
the
know
help of the
who it
city
was.
attorney.
But
But what, now you're bringing a junior cannabis attorney?
Yep.
Let's try to move on to
Okay.
a solution here. And I would again emphasize that staff is sitting down with you all tomorrow to understand it. And let's try to figure this out, because Chair Pont and our city attorney have advised us. And I think we need to try to work through that. And as Chair Pont says, you're very, very close. So let's try to focus on getting to that successful point. Let's not dwell on what has occurred. The city attorney has advised us. We've got to rely on that. But let's go to a solution.
Okay.
and we're trying to do it so you don't lose any more time. The next time you'll come forward with a concerted step, which will be subdivision, conditional use permit, and your design review for your structure. Which
Okay.
means the next day you can go out and pull your building permit if you've got a full set of plans.
Okay.
I mean, I recognize this is frustrating, but it's got to be less frustrating than the last one, where you got caught between the change and the zoning codes.
Yeah, but it's just, it still feels completely unreliable working with the city because every time we're given advice, it is not.
Like I said, the other option would be come here tonight and get denied. I mean, that would have been the other option, and I don't think you would have wanted that either.
Well, at this point, we have like a lot of documented damages
If
in
you
reliance
have-
on
if-
city
if-
written
if-
instructions.
If you care to pursue this, that's your choice.
But again, let's move on. I think we've
Okay.
heard you. We really understand your frustration. We understand that you've got a meeting with staff tomorrow. Let's move on to the solution. We have heard you,
Okay.
and you've heard us, and you may not agree with us, but let's move on to the next step and see if we can get a solution.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, with that, I presume our only action would be to defer this item to a date uncertain, or do we have an exact date?
I would recommend, we could, I would prefer we move it to a date certain, and that way we don't have to renotice it, and if it's not ready, we can move it again.
Okay,
So I would
so-
say July 15th.
July
Well,
15th?
I'm, again, I would like to see if the applicant would like to have this done in 2 steps as opposed to 1 step and have the certainty of this one issue resolved earlier. I don't want to move it to a date certain that is so far out that they don't have the opportunity to basically have the application dealt with in 2 steps.
Well, if the applicant wishes that, does the applicant wish to do it in 1 concerted step or 2 steps?
And why can't we why can't we continue it with both options?
For noticing purposes, we have to choose a date. So the earliest date would be June 17th.
And at that point, if they'd like to go in 1 step, we'd just continue it again, wouldn't we?
Correct.
So I'd go for moving it to June 17th unless the applicant today objects to that.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. And then what the applicant should know is that basically that's 1 step of 2 steps, so you're still going to have to go through that next step. On the other hand, if you then choose to say we want to wait to go through the 2 steps all at once in July, that'd be possible at that point.
Yeah, as I think about it, the noticing, and also we would publish that staff report early. Let me just look at my calendar here, so because I don't want to mislead about a date that we might not be able to meet for notice. So that packet would go out June 5th, and they have not submitted any plans to us yet. I would say maybe the earliest they could submit to us is maybe Friday the 16th, because they have to submit a grading plan with a flag lot. So let's just say optimistically the 16th. And then we have DRC, our internal meeting wouldn't be until June 5th.
They need a grading plan for the CUP?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
in the zoning code of requirements. So I honestly don't, it doesn't look actually that June 17th. I have another project that we're trying to move to June 17th. But I mean, we can put it on there, and if they move heaven and earth, we'll try and make it happen, but we could always move it back again.
In light of this particular set of circumstances, let's try for June 17th.
Okay.
Okay, we have a date if everybody agrees to it. Does somebody want to make a motion to move this to?
I move to move it to the date certain of June 17th. Obviously, if that doesn't work out, we'll have to move it further, but I move it to June 17th.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let's back up a bit. Close the public hearing now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move it to the date certain of June 17th, recognizing that could change at that time as well.
Any more discussion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez. Ms. Gamero, you tally the votes, please.
Vice Chair Warner,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Furtick,
Yes.
and Chair Pont.
Yes, this item is concluded. And I will probably read it next time with the blinders on, so I don't see any of the words. All right, so we're to 5.1, request by Centric Building, Inc. on behalf of the St. Helena Community Church for adoption of a resolution, attachment 1, approving a conditional use permit amendment, and resolution, attachment 2, approving design review for modifications to an existing church building, including removal of a three poorly constructed additions, rehabilitation of the church building, construction of a chapel addition, a new classroom building, a two-story building with storage and services on the first floor, and a second-story parsonage and a storage shed, installation of site landscaping, hardscaping, parking lot, and signage at 1343 Spring Street within the public, quasi-public zoning district and the historic preservation overlay district. Before I get started, public hearing is open. Does anybody have any ex parte contact on this item to fess up to?
No.
No, okay. Then I will need the staff report, please. Director DeRosa.
Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce you again to Linda Roofing, the city project manager, who will be presenting this project.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm Linda Roofing from North Coast Community Planning. And as Maya said, I'll be presenting the report this evening. The application before you was submitted by Centric Building on behalf of the St. Helena Community Church project. And before I head into the staff report, I just want to thank the applicants and their team and agents for being very responsive to all the requests for information that we provided and helping us get it to this point this evening. Oops. Here we go. So there are two applications before you. The first is a conditional use permit amendment, and it's to convert the use of the property from a private school to a church. While it hasn't operated as a private school in quite some time, the existing use permit that runs with the land for that property was for the St. Helena Montessori School. The second application is major design review to authorize a number of renovations and new construction to the property. So there's restoration of the existing church building, demolition of 3 additions to the church, a removal of the existing pavement and existing shed, and then construction of an addition to the church to extend the chapel, construction of a separate Sunday school classroom, and then attached to that is a support services building with a second-story parsonage. There's a new parking lot, a new storage shed, signage, and then installation of patios, courtyards, walkways, landscaping, irrigation, and exterior lighting. So this slide shows the location of the church that's in the Spring Street neighborhood. It fronts on Spring Street. The Native Sons of the Golden West are the next door neighbor to the north, which is to the kind of right of the parcel. As shown on this slide, the Grace Episcopal Church is directly across the street. The Catholic Church is up the street, and the First Presbyterian Church is about a half a block away. It is in the public and quasi-public zoning district. This district allows churches as a conditionally permitted use. It is also in the historic preservation overlay district. So what you can see on this slide is the pink shows all the historic properties. So this property is on the local register as the First Baptist Church. The church building was constructed as a residence back in 1874 and then converted into a church in the mid-1950s. So because it was in the Historic Preservation Overlay District and on the local register, a historic resources evaluation was prepared for the site. So a little background on the property. The residence, as I said, was constructed in 1874. There was a major remodel and basically conversion of the residence into a church in the mid-1950s. The second story was removed, so very substantial. And then there were additional renovations in the 1970s. There were 3 additions put onto the project on the north and east elevations. There was 1 portable classroom installed in a rear yard in the early 1990s for the Montessori school, and then in 2000, under the city's zoning code at the time, a use permit was granted to expand the school use and to add a second portable classroom. And in 2008, that use permit was amended to expand enrollment at the school. The 2 portable classrooms were removed in the recent past. And so, like I said, the Montessori school, they vacated the property over 10 years ago. And since then, there have been other tenants, but the property is currently vacant. And for those of you who are familiar with it, it's definitely fallen into disrepair. So I'm going to show you some slides of the property. This is, on the top here is the view from the street looking kind of to the northeast. You can see the Native Sons Hall behind it. And then the bottom picture shows the property, that's the south wall of the property that has the historic windows. That's like probably the most historic or intact historic part of the property. And this slide shows the interior rear of the parcel, and both of these photos kind of show like the property is very feral right now. So this is the top slide is the paved parking area from prior uses, and the bottom slide shows the one of the foundations for a portable classroom, and there's some materials that are stored there. There we go. This slide shows the east and north elevations of the property. And what I want to point out here is you can see the additions that are going to be removed. On the top, which is the east or the rear elevation, is the addition that's kind of at the back of the existing church. And that's, that will be removed, and that's where the new chancel goes. And then this slide on the bottom here shows the 2 additions to the meeting room portion of the church building, which is under the gable roof, and on either side are these kind of funky old additions that will be demolished. This slide shows their site plan and demolition plan. The light orange indicates the parts of the building that will be removed. It has the location of the 2 portable classrooms that have been removed in the rear. But then you can see the 3 additions that will be removed from the church building, and it will be restored to its original configuration. All that pavement will be removed. And then there's a shed in the back that would be demolished as well. This slide shows the site plan, and I know it's really small, but I have the following slides have some blow-ups, but this gives you the overall kind of picture of what they're doing. So the church, as I said, would be restored to its original configuration. There's a deck that's added off of the meeting room where one of the additions is going to be removed, and then the chancel is kind of back at the rear of the chapel. And then there's the new part of the project, which, so behind the chancel there's like an outdoor it's an exterior podium. It's kind of like a covered area that looks out onto a courtyard, and then beyond that courtyard is a covered patio that is an extension of the roof structure of the Sunday school classroom, which is the kind of greenhouse building, which you'll see in a moment. And then you have the support services and parsonage attached to the back of that. So they definitely are utilizing the property, and then the parking is on the south side, and the whole site will be re-landscaped. So this slide shows a blow-up of the floor plan of the church building. And this one shows the Sunday school classroom and the support services. And here's the floor plan of the second-story parsonage, which would be a residence for a church employee. So this next set of slides shows the existing elevations of the building and the proposed elevations. So this is the west elevation, which is the front of the building that faces Spring Street. And as you can see on the top, there's the addition on the left-hand side that will be removed. And then on the bottom slide, you can see kind of the top of the chancel at the back of the church is kind of poking up above the roof line, and then there's a steel cross at the peak of that roof. And then there's improved access and and ADA compliant ramps, so you can see kind of the existing ramps that are being removed and some of the new ramps that are proposed. This slide shows the south elevation. The existing elevation, as I said, has those 3 sets of historic windows. And you can see on the right-hand side the addition on the rear that will be removed. And then if you go down to the bottom of this slide, you can see the existing chapel on the left, the chapel extension or the chancel on the right of that, and then the courtyard, the covered patio, the unconditioned classroom, which is that greenhouse structure, and then the support services and parsonage building. And this slide is labeled as to the building materials. So both the chapel extension and the parsonage and support services building are clad in limestone panels, both for the siding and the roof. And then the Sunday school classroom and that covered patio it's a greenhouse system with polycarbonate siding on a metal structure, and then they have sliding doors on both sides of the classroom for cross ventilation. So this slide shows the east elevation or the rear of the building, and again on the top you can see the addition that will be, or the non-historic addition that will be removed from the existing structure. And over on the right, there's more that would be removed from the church. The other addition and some of the access features there. And then this is the basically the east elevation of the church itself. And so what you're looking at on the bottom is the covered podium, the exterior covered podium. And this next slide is the north elevation, which is the elevation that faces the Native Sons Hall. And here, again, this is the elevation where the 2 additions on either side of that gabled roof structure would be removed. And you can see the extension basically of the chapel, the patio, the classroom, and everything just from the other perspective. And then these are the west elevation of, let's see, okay, so these are both elevations of the Sunday school classroom. So the top one, you're looking basically from the courtyard at that structure. And then the bottom one is you're looking from like the neighbors to the east, basically looking at the stucco clad side of the support services building and the parsonage. This slide shows the materials that are proposed. So, at the top you can see the limestone panels, the greenhouse system, and then at the bottom are two renderings that provide a really great depiction of what the project would look like when completed. All right, so let me get into the analysis here. So the project requires a conditional use permit, and there are a number of items that we consider with the use permit. The CUP is needed because it's a community assembly use. And really what we're looking at with the conditional use permit is compatibility with neighboring uses. In the applicant's project description and attached to the resolution for the conditional use permit is a schedule of uses that explains how the project or how the church would operate and the various uses that they expect. And it's standard uses associated with the church, basically services, Bible studies, Sunday school, counseling meetings, weddings, funerals. The parking on the project I'm going to talk a little more about in depth during or when I get into zoning consistency, but the conditional use permit is where the parking conditions reside. And so there are conditions requiring recordation of a parking agreement. A use permit amendment would be required if there are changes to the off-site parking agreement, and a parking management plan will be required, just to make sure that there are no impacts to the neighborhood. In terms of noise and the activities, there is a condition that restricts activities to between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. and requires compliance with the city's noise ordinance. And then the other thing that needs to be considered in a use permit is conformance with the city's water neutrality requirements. And in this case, since there is a use permit for the private school on the property, they have a water service agreement that allows for use of a certain amount of water, and the projected use of the church even with all of the uses and the landscaping is quite a bit less than what they are allotted. So there's really no issues there. And the findings for the use permit are, consistency with the general plan and zoning, that the use won't impact the neighborhood. And like I said, we have conditions regarding noise and parking. That the site is suited for the use and served by adequate streets. In this case, there's a number of similar uses in the neighborhood and the streets are adequate. And that the project complies with CEQA, and you will be making a CEQA finding if you go forward with this project. And our recommendation is that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act under the repair and maintenance, small construction of small facilities, and construction of accessory structures exemptions. So now I want to move into the historic preservation considerations. As I mentioned, the property's in the Historic Preservation Overlay Zone, and it's listed on the city's local register. The applicants prepared a historic property evaluation and impact assessment report, and it actually concluded that the property is not eligible for listing on the National Register, the California State Register, or the local register due to loss of integrity. So, it's a historic property. The evaluation and impact assessment report, which is included in your staff report as an attachment, is a really interesting document. But it basically, because the property, even though it was built, during the pioneer era, and so it's important because of that, and it's associated with the Chiles family, which was, a pioneer family. Because of the extensive remodels and the fact that the second story was removed and it was converted to a church, it just doesn't have the integrity. And so when they determined this was after the project had actually been designed to comply with the city's requirements and the Secretary of Interior requirements. And the property owners opted not to pursue removal of the property from the local register because the project can be approved without doing that. It's a beautiful structure. It does feel like a historic structure. But certainly at some point in the future, if the city wanted to remove it from the register, you could, and you have a really solid historic property evaluation and impact assessment report prepared by an architectural historian to support that. So this slide just runs through the various findings that need to be made because it actually is still on the city register. And our staff's recommendation is that you can make all these findings. The property will be used for its historic purpose as a church. The historic character of the properties retained. The arched windows on the south elevation will be preserved. There's no changes that create a false sense of history, like the new additions to the church are clearly new additions. There are no features that have gained historic significance in their own right on the property. The distinctive features and examples of craftsmanship, which are the windows and just that existing church structure, are preserved, and where possible, deteriorated features like those windows will be repaired rather than replaced. There's no chemical treatment proposed, no archaeological resources on the site, and the new additions and construction have been undertaken in a manner, or will be undertaken in a manner that, if removed, would not impact the structure. So that's it for historic preservation. Moving on to the design review considerations. We look at consistency with the general plan, compliance with zoning standards, off-street parking requirements, landscaping requirements, exterior lighting, and signage. And I'm just going to walk you through these real quickly here. So this table shows the site development standards in terms of the floor area ratio, the lot coverage, the building height, the setbacks. This project complies with everything. There's no variance requests here. I want to talk a little more specifically about off-street parking. So this table shows how the parking standards that are in the city's code are applied to the property. So for community assembly with fixed seating, which is the chapel itself, you require 1 space per 4 seats. The community assembly without fixed seating, there is none of that. The school, you have 3 spaces per classroom. The administrative and office space, 1 space per 350 square feet, and then the residential use, 1 space per 1 bedroom. So that's how you come up with the 23 spaces. Their proposal is to provide the 10 spaces, including the accessible spaces, on-site in the on-site parking lot. And then they have reached an agreement with the Catholic Church to lease 13 spaces up the street. And let's see, let me just show you where the lease spaces are. So there you can see kind of on it's the Catholic school property right on the corner, a block up from the St. Helena Community Church property is where the 13 leased spaces would be. And I want to come back to this slide I had before because I want to talk just a little bit about the covered patio, and we kind of went back and forth in the staff report about like, well, should that covered patio be considered community assembly without fixed seating? And then Director DeRosa had a conversation with the applicant's agent, and they came up with this. Well, look, if rather than providing 12 additional spaces, how about if we just don't use that for assembly? That space. And so we have a condition in your staff report that says that they won't use it. And then as we kind of thought it through after the report was published, we were like, that doesn't really make sense. They have this courtyard out there, that covered space, like if there are uses in the classroom and it's too hot in the classroom, like, I mean, you want to be able to use that space. And so we are recommending that covered patio not be considered assembly space for the purposes of calculating parking requirements, and that we just eliminate that condition. So when I get to the recommendation, which I am going to get to really soon, I will show you the language for that. Oh, and the other item that I just want to mention now is that there is a condition that requires that if they were to lose their lease with the Catholic Church, that they would need to come back with an alternative off-site parking solution and a use permit amendment. And we are recommending a modification to that condition as well, that isn't just like if they lose the parking, but that's just more like as changes, like if they were to lose the parking, but also if it were to be restricted in any other way, that they check in and a use permit amendment may be required for that. But basically, we believe that with the 23 parking spaces and an effective parking management plan, that they can manage the parking even for bigger events on the site in a way that won't impact the neighborhood. Okay, that's the parking lot. So this shows the landscaping plan. As you can see, it's pretty extensive. They have retained, like the existing trees that are worth retaining on the property, they've retained. There's like 3 of them on the south property line, and I think there might be 1 or 2 on the north. But they are planting a lot of trees. It will be a shaded property, and they have ornamental landscaping. There's a couple of detention basins for stormwater at the rear of the property, both kind of on both sides of the structure. But it's a really nice landscaping plan. It complies with the city's requirements in terms of the landscaping for the parking lot, and it meets your water efficient landscaping ordinance requirements as well. Okay, so I realized after I submitted the PowerPoint that this one's labeled signage and lighting, but it really only talks about signage. So I will talk about lighting without a graphic, but this is the signage that's proposed. It's a monument sign out at the front of the church facing Spring Street. Very simple, understated, has some uplighting in the base that lights it up, and it complies with the city's signage requirements. In terms of lighting, they did submit a lighting plan, and unfortunately, I don't have a slide of it here, but the lighting, it complies with your requirements, and that's also something that at the building permit stage, we take a really close look at to make sure that it isn't excessive and that it's not going to be problematic for the neighbors, especially when buildings like this adjoin residential uses. So this slide just has the design review findings that you need to make. These findings are included in the resolution that we're presenting to you this evening with basically supporting information. So it's conformance with general plan and zoning. The siting form, architectural style are appropriate, roof design, building massing, articulation, details, materials, colors, landscaping, kind of all of it. And then I think I just have one more slide here, which is just a few other things. So this slide has the CEQA determination, which I talked a little bit about before. I also, in the staff report, just wanted to mention that this project as a church is subject to federal legislation, the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. And basically what that says is that you just need to be really considerate when you're placing restrictions on the use of a property for a church, that you're not discriminating in any way, and that all similar uses are treated the same. And I think this project is consistent with your zoning code, and I think the conditions that we've attached to it are consistent with our LUIPA. We had three letters of support included in the staff packet. Two of them are from the same owner. One of them was earlier, and then it got refreshed. But they're basically from the neighbors on either side. One is from the Native Sons saying, we are so happy to have these guys as neighbors, and the other is from the residents on the other side saying, we love the project. And
Native Sons, but that's okay.
Oh, Native Sons?
They might not be so happy with the Native Sons. It may work the opposite.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, so recommended actions, 3 actions. The first is just the determination that the project is exempt from CEQA. The second is approval of a resolution granting approval of a use permit amendment. And the third is a resolution granting approval of the major design review. So I'll come back to this slide for your motion-making things, but I just wanted to say I do have here a slide that shows the modifications to the conditions for the use permit. So condition number 18, instead of being should the parking agreement be nullified at any time in the future, the church needs to notify the city and submit an alternative off-site parking plan. It says, should it be modified to reduce the number of leased parking space or to restrict their availability? So that just gives a little more assurance that those 13 spaces will remain available or be replaced. And then condition 20 there, which was about the area under the covered patio not being used for assembly, we are recommending that just be struck. Okay, so that concludes my staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff at this point by any member of the commission? No?
I just want to say, good staff presentation. Really appreciate the detail.
Thank you.
All right, I would like to, at this point, okay. Better speakers this time. What's going on? Anyway, I'd like at this point to invite the applicant to speak to the commission if they care to. Although with that address and the information, I don't know how much you're going to say, but have at.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Ole Lundberg from Lundberg Design. We're the architects for the project. I'm not going to take much of your time because you already had an extraordinary presentation. Thank you for such a careful job. I think you understand the building fairly well. I really just want to talk about three, I think, sort of stories about the building, which are important to me, and I hope will convey the passion that we have for this project and how excited we are to see this happen. The first one is that, when you're dealing as an architect with a building that was constructed far before I was born, there's a certain humility, I think, that has to come with how you approach these projects, and we've tried very hard to respect the Secretary of Interior standards, to delineate the work we're doing is different from what was existing. But the existing building was obviously in very poor condition, and we wanted to find a way to honor that building that was meaningful. And what we came up with is, first of all, to obviously leave the exterior of the house and the chapel essentially intact, not change them from a design point of view, but really add an exterior skin to them which provides the insulation for the buildings, which gave us the opportunity to remove the interior finishes, which were nothing. They were a combination of stucco and bad sheetrock, and expose the framing on the interior of the building. Now, one of the things that I've noticed in watching building my whole life is that often buildings, as they're being framed, are these incredibly beautiful, delicate structures, and then after we cover them up, they're not as beautiful anymore. And we're celebrating the framing of the interior of this building. The framing we left exposed. The siding, which was probably old-growth redwood, the back of it was never painted, so it is also just natural redwood. And I think it will be this incredibly warm wooden skeleton of a building exposed as the interior. The people that built that never anticipated I was going to do that, but I'm sort of excited to be able to do that for them. The second thing that I want to talk about is the limestone on the exterior of these buildings. This was an extraordinary opportunity. We discovered while we were working on this building that there was a building that Microsoft had designed, pulled permits, and ordered the material cladding for, and then they canceled it. And so we were able to acquire these 5-foot wide, 16-foot tall limestone panels. They're actually only 1/4-inch thick limestone, but they're laminated to an aluminum hexel that's filled with resin and then a stainless sheet on the back of it. So they're much lighter, although they're still 600 pounds each, and they don't break when you move them, which obviously the limestone would. So we have this opportunity to design the rear additions of the two buildings out of these sort of very simple, elegant limestone panels that I think are kind of a reference to many of the limestone buildings of St. Helena, obviously in a very contemporary, modern fashion. The third thing that I want to talk about is behind the chapel, where we're standing at the altar behind the minister, we have a piece of wood. It's a piece of wood that I've owned for 30 years. It's 6 feet wide, 17 feet tall. It's a single slab of redwood that I bought in a barn in Mendocino when I was young and crazy and pretty sure I'd find a use for it pretty soon. But I quickly discovered that as I got this panel, when it's lying down, it's kind of meaningless. It's a fallen giant and it's a little sad. And besides, a 6-foot wide table is a silly table. You can't even see people on the other side. So I've always thought it needed to be standing up, and this is the perfect use for that. And not only will it be for the altar speaking to the congregation inside, but if you look at the plan, we actually, on the other side of this slab, have another altar speaking to the outside, if it should be a assembly there, which hopefully we're allowed to do. And so we can use both sides of the slab. What's really wonderful is that one side of the slab is actually relatively smooth. We will make it very smooth. It will be polished very carefully. The other side has been milled by a saw that dropped every 6 inches. And so there's a 6-inch saw pattern on the back of it, which we will leave on that one. So one side will be very smooth. The other side will be very rough. It's probably a metaphor for something. I won't get into that now. But I'm delighted that I, in my lifetime, finally get to use this panel. We're very excited about that. I'm happy to answer any questions any of you have, but I just wanted to communicate the joy, really, that we've had with designing this building.
All I can think is Marie Kondo would not like you very much at all.
Probably true.
Any questions of the applicant or staff at this point? Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate the architecture. It's a great design. It's very well done. I'm wondering if anybody from the church is actually here tonight who could stand up, and I just wanted to, if you're willing to stand up, I had a question for you. You might want to go to the microphone too. Maybe identify yourself.
Yes, I'm Celeste White, and I wanted to say that in 1977, my husband, who's also here, Robert White, we were married in St. Helena on Spring Street, but at the other church down the street. During our first year of marriage, we were living out at my dad's ranch in Childs Valley, and it was a difficult first year of our marriage. So we went to the First Baptist Church on Spring Street, and we sat in the pew, and unbeknownst to me, my husband filled out a card. And the cards, and he put it in the offering dish, and it said, "I'm a newlywed, and I think that we're having marital problems." So that was the beginning of our journey with the Baptist Church. The pastor at the time drove out to the ranch to meet with my husband while I was at work helping Daryl Satui start Daryl Satui Winery. So he met with my husband, and that was the beginning of our journey with the Baptist Church. It's always been very important to us as a couple. And then in addition to that, my dad's ranch was in Childs Valley, and Joseph Childs was actually from the area where my dad's ranch was. So my dad knew the history of Mr. Childs, who built the house so that his girls could go to school in town. So at any rate, when the opportunity became available to us to restore the church, we just felt as though this was a sign that it was meant to be for us to do. It had fallen into disrepair, and I have a bicycle in town, and I used to ride my bike by, and I'd see all kinds of things going on the property that were really sad. And I think it was a target for some of the young kids just to hang out in the back. And I think there were some homeless people living back there. So there was just so many reasons why we just felt this was important for us to take on this project. And we're very, 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 very excited about it. We have a wonderful team. Centric has been amazing. Lundberg Design has been amazing. And then support, we have the chair of the church here tonight, Susan Larson, and then the landscape architect, Maria White. So, and I'd like her to say a few words as well. But we've been working for a long time on this, almost 2 years. So we just appreciate your support. We appreciate you moving forward and allowing us to have this church restored so that the community can enjoy it.
That's great. And I have one question, or it might be for the church person here.
Yes.
I'm going to precede it with the fact that I come from a church family as well. And when I was a boy, I hope you'll allow me to do this, we used to have this thing where it said, "Here's the church.
Here's the steeple.
Here's the steeple.
Open the doors.
Look inside and hear all the people."
Yes. So hopefully you'll come.
From my perspective, I really would like to have some sense of when do you expect to have the church occupied by the congregants?
Well, I think that depends on all of you.
Well, let's assume for the sake of argument that it's approved tonight. But again, I'm very excited at the fact that this is a property, this is a historic church that's not only being restored, but it's going to be filled with people.
Yeah.
And a church, a community church.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you have any sense of when you expect to have the actual building filled with congregants and the pastor and having services?
Probably 1 year, yes.
1 year. Well, that's great because things don't usually take only a year to rebuild.
Yeah.
But,
so we've already, have started a lot of the the issues of governance. We've got the bylaws done, and we are putting together our pastoral search committee. So we already have people that are interested in coming. Yeah, I actually think the problem we're going to have is having space. People are going to want to come. It's going to be the bicycle church also. I'd love to have our landscape architect come up and say a few words as well.
That's fine. I just want to compliment you because part of this is open the church and the people. The people are the church.
Well, this is why we're doing it.
That's great.
Right? So that maybe there's another young couple, such as my husband and I were, right, that can get help there.
Right. Thank you.
Hello, E. Maria White. I'm landscape architect. Also, I want to say, Celeste and Robert have built another church in Yountville, the Yountville Community Church, and completely restored. It was a historic property, and it was completely vacant. There was the dying congregation. There was, I think, 40 people that attended that church, and now we have, I think, about 100 every Sunday. So there is a precedent for this, and which is the reason why they received this project from, was it the Baptist? Because they saw the success that they have at this other church, non-denominational, open to the community, kind of a different system, fresh look. And so I do believe, and if you see that church, which I think you should all visit if you can, it's a beautiful job that was done there. And so, and people really appreciate it and love it. And it's a young community, a lot of people from the neighborhood, from Napa. And I think it would be fun for us to have something that's fresh and young and youthful and the bicycle church, like Celeste was saying, here in town. So, yeah, we will have lots of bike parking all around. We are complying, like you said, with the WELO. Everything is going to be low water use, lots of native plants that are resistant to the heat here. It gets really hot in St. Helena, which is why I put tons of shade trees there. We are going to have ancient olive trees in the front, I think 3 or 4 of them. We're going to leave there's a really ancient Japanese or Italian cypress there that we're just going to leave it. And then in the back, we'll have the bioretention ponds, which will take all the water from the roof, all the added concrete. We're going to have a lot of concrete on the site, new roofs. Everything is going to be taken to the 2 bioretention facilities in the end, so that we're taking care of that. And I think the main thing is just making it open, and it's almost going to be like a public space because it's really not going to have any fences or railing or guardrails or anything. It's going to be open to the public, and we want people to feel like they can use this space throughout the week, as a just a place for them to go and eat their lunch, or kind of like the Grace Baptist in the front. They have the labyrinth, sort of that idea where it's open to the public, and that's what we want to convey here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of, yes, Commissioner Furtick?
Yes, thank you so much. So I think this is such an interesting project, and thank you all for collaborating on it. And particularly the design, which marries something so traditional and something so untraditional. So kudos to you for doing that.
Are you jumping to the end, or you got a question in there someplace?
I do have a question, a comment which leads to a question, and that is for the landscape designer. So we had a presentation here maybe a month or 2 ago by our fire chief, updating us on fire-wise issues. And he happened to put up a slide on plants that were among the most flammable plants. And Italian cypress was one of them. And so, I think we need more awareness around, I can't remember the other plants on that list, but I did remember that. And so I think we need more awareness around that when we do develop projects, whether they're new projects or remodeling projects, and to get the word out to our landscape designers and architects. so that we do try to avoid planting those. I mean, there are some things we can, some things we can avoid and some things we can't, but to avoid the things that we can in terms of being fire-wise would be ideal. So I'm not sure if you knew that. I certainly did not know that. And we certainly have plenty of cypress, in this community. It is a Mediterranean, plant, so we see a lot of that here. But it's obviously something we should avoid. So just wanted to bring that to your awareness.
Thank you.
Existing plant.
Yeah, no, it's usually anything that has like a oily, kind of fragrant leaf is what's going to catch fire. So like the bay leaf or any kind of juniper. But actually the biggest thing that I've seen from Firewise is the mulch. So you're not supposed to put mulch up to 3 feet from the house. So that is a good thing to point out, and probably we should try to keep, bark away from the building. The Italian cypress that I was mentioning, we're actually not planting any Italian cypresses, but the one that I was mentioning is an existing one that is enormous. And I just didn't want to take it out because it kind of felt historic. And also we have a house right next to it, and it's like that pink house. I don't know if you've seen it on Spring Street. And so I kind of wanted to keep it for privacy. But, it is for sure like a matchstick if there was ever fire. I mean, I would be okay with taking it out and putting another ancient olive tree there, but I guess it's just,
Maybe review that with the property owner.
Yeah.
Any
She
other questions?
likes the Italian cypress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lopez, please.
So I walked the site a little, born and raised here. I didn't think it was that bad of a property until I walked it and saw it. And I've done some restoration, not probably as old as that, but I wanted to ask, is there the windows, is there pictures of it when it was 1874 or is it a 1950 design? And I also walked around and saw a lot of dry rot on the redwood siding, which is doable. It was very manageable, but you said it was going to be exposed on the inside, so you would kind of restore the lap siding and leave the framing. I just was curious because I do love the windows. I just want to know how old the design is.
Right. Well, that portion of the structure that you're referring to was the 1950 edition. Okay. That's when they made it the church. So the smaller gable piece, that was the residence, and that used to have 2 stories, and then they pulled the floor out of it and essentially made it part of the church. That will be the meeting hall for us in the new design. What we're doing with the existing congregation space is that we're actually framing a new wall on the outside of the old siding that will be the insulation, so the 6 inches of insulation, and then of course sheathing and hardy board siding, so it's not flammable.
Yeah.
And we'll restore the redwood to the extent we need to, but we probably don't need to do very much because we don't need it to keep water out anymore.
Yeah.
And actually from the inside it looks pretty good. It looks worse from the outside because of course you see the paint peeling and that. So from the inside it actually looks remarkably intact. So we'll have a little bit of patching here and there. And we'll find some nice old growth salvaged redwood that we'll patch it when we need to. But for the most part, I think we're in pretty good shape there.
I believe they are keeping the 1870 windows.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And I should have said, so the windows, we're actually taking those and we're just moving them out so they have the same relationship to the exterior plane that they did. So they'll be in the new framed wall. So from the outside, it'll actually look like the old building.
So they are from those rounded windows are from 1874.
No, they're not.
Or they're not.
They're not. But we are keeping those, and we're keeping the windows in that were left in the residence, but most of those are gone.
Yeah, they weren't the original.
Yeah.
Okay, got that.
Most significant ornamental remnant of the original 1870s house, according to the historical structure.
Right.
So
Yeah, there's a picture. So attachment 12 to the staff report is the historic property evaluation, and on page 13 of it, there's a picture of the house, like right before it was renovated in the 50s, and you can kind of see those windows
Around it,
on
okay, the eyebrow,
south
it's like
wall.
an eyebrow window now.
But you can also see like how massively taking the second story off of it changed the structure.
I do have one question. It's more of a concern, I suppose, than anything else. You've got a classroom that is built more like a greenhouse with no heating and no air conditioning. I'm wondering if that might be a little too hot and too cold, actually, for students.
Well, there will definitely be times when it's too hot and too cold. But the advantage of the approach we're taking, using essentially a prefabricated greenhouse structure, galvanized steel greenhouse structure, is that it doesn't cost what a building costs. You know, it's a very economical structure to put up, provides extraordinary shade. We're going to have big fans inside to move the air, and then we have operable doors all the way around 3 sides to encourage cross ventilation as much as possible. I think heat is going to be more of a problem than cold. The reality is, I think if you fill it up with people and close it up, it'll probably warm up kind of by itself. It will also, the polycarbonate, of course, will let some sunlight through, so it will get some solar gain as well. But we don't want it to be too good at that, because then it will really be an oven. So we're playing that off each other. And I think in an ideal world where budgets didn't matter, maybe you would build a building. But this was a really, I think, clever way of providing the space we needed, knowing that it wouldn't be perfect all the time. But, there's something really wonderful about sort of sitting outside under cover, even if it might be raining but not particularly cold. I think there's something quite magical about that. And I think that, yes, there will be times it's not perfect, but there will be times where it's really great.
Okay, that was it for me. Anybody else? No? No more questions? If there's no more questions of staff or the applicant, I have to ask this. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against this project, now's the time to do it. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Anybody want to start this one off? Vice Chair Warner.
I'll start off. And again, for me, I see 2 things about this project. One is the tremendous amount of work being done on maintaining the tradition through the restoration, and the work with staff, the work with the architect, the work with the owner is very extensive and very detailed, and I think that is a very big plus. But for me, just as big a plus is to take what is a building that's been unused, basically abandoned in place in some ways because not used, and now finding a new use for it. Well, an old use now, a new use, after many years. I've gone past the building many times in the last 8 years when I've been here in St. Helena, and I wondered, why is that building unoccupied? Now, that's not to say that the Montessori school wasn't a great addition, but I think one of the great values of this project is this will be not only a church that's restored, but it'll be a church with people, and it'll be used. And I think that's the most important positive aspect.
Anybody? Yes.
Yeah,
Commissioner Lopez.
I like to say that I'm very pleased with the efforts of restoration plus the new addition. Being that, you found out later that it probably can't list in the historic list. I think that just having those values and the windows that do go back in time to the 1874, I think all St. Helenas will agree that it's kind of preserving history, and then that it blends in with the other churches and environments, and you're interacting with the Catholic Church that has the parking. It just feels right. And I think that when you restore, let's say it doesn't work out which God forbid, right? It doesn't continue to be a church, but you restored it the way you did. You're preserving it forever with the right craftsmanship and putting it back in. it'll live on because it's not going to go in disrepair like it is right now. It's in danger of going away forever and something coming up that doesn't fit in its environment. So I'm very happy with what you've done as far as design, and I think it's going to stand the test of time once it's restored, which I think that's kind of what you've been doing from Yountville to here, and I know all those little towns, and it's great when you restore the buildings right. So thank you for the time invested in it.
Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Furtick, anything to add? No? Commissioner Furtick?
Well, I started to say it, but I'll say it again. You know, I like this for 2 reasons. One, that, again, it brings community together. We have yet one more place that brings community together in St. Helena, which is always a great thing. But I also like it for its interest, its aesthetic interest. You know, it's unique. It's architecturally interesting. It enhances our aesthetic beauty here in St. Helena. So thank you, all of you, for your creativity, your investment in enhancing our community.
Ditto? No. Great design, sensitive both to the location and the use, you know, and the existing old building, the parts of it that are still usable. I can't, I suppose, sing your praises is a bit of a pun, but there it is. And I think we're ready for a motion if somebody cares to make one. Could you?
Actually,
oh, you are going to say
I
something.
would like to say something because nobody else is saying it. And I don't see how there's possibly a need for another church in this town. We have so many. And I know we can't deny projects based on personal preferences, but it seems like there could have been a better use for this space than another church, which we've all just said they're, it's just like the church down the street and they can use the parking from the church down the street. And it's like, there are a lot of churches, there are plenty of opportunities for worship. And I don't agree, but there we go.
There you go.
May I respond to my fellow commissioner?
Please.
On that? The dilemma is that when a building like this sits empty and unused for as long as this building has been, in some ways we can't be choosers. We can't basically hope that somebody else is going to come along for another use. This community church has come along not only to make it useful, but also to restore it. And I think Hector made the point that the restoration does not actually forbid future uses either. If the church tends to be unneeded or unused, or things do change over time, I think this restoration will also be useful for other potential uses. So net on net, I tend to agree with you that basically you wish that the need was fully supported, or if there's any doubts or questions that the need is going to be there. But I think your point is also addressed by the fact that once this church is restored, it's available for other uses no matter what happens. And I think also the fact that they came along to make use of what was otherwise an empty, almost derelict building is a huge plus for the community.
I have one more comment. If this project had been a housing project that didn't have enough parking, we would have got a lot of complaints. But it's a church without enough parking and leasing parking, and we didn't get anybody
I will say something to that
at all.
We have accepted projects in the past that have negotiated parking spaces in other locations. In fact, a couple of them, the majority of their parking was in another location, just nearby. And this is relatively nearby. So I don't know how we could not consider this given what we've done with other projects of the similar scope.
I don't have a problem with there not being parking on site, to be clear.
Okay. Yes.
I just want to mention too, when I walked the site and looking where the modulars were and all that cement and concrete, I just saw that's a lot of money to pull that stuff out and make it back to what it was. And I mean, sometimes you almost rather give up than restore something. So when I saw it and then I saw the design, I just said, you know what, they're restoring it. It can be used for other things. I agree. I wish there was a lot more housing, especially affordable housing. But, you know, doing a proper restoration, getting more church members, maybe we'll get there. Maybe that's the good way to get there. But you're right. We get frustrated with some projects that aren't even allowed when everything's right there for low-income housing. But I got to say, when I walked that area, I just couldn't believe so much was done to it that was so trashy and so temporary, and it was allowed by other commissioners. And now we're kind of going back to where it was church. So it had been used at one time for that purpose. And then, like I said, once you restore it, it's alive forever if you do it right. And it sounds like everything's being done right. So, yeah, there's a lot more money in that. And probably some people wouldn't have taken that love to restoring it back to its classic town days. But there was a lot fewer people back then, too. And these churches were that close together. So, you know, now there's kind of more of us, it's kind of growing in a certain way. But, yeah, I really applaud the investment and the love to restore such a property.
Well, we have the staff recommendation up. If anyone cares to make a recommendation or a motion, let's hear it. Now's the time.
And just to add, to make sure that we add after number 3 and number 2, that with the amend, I'm not sure, Ms. Roofing, are those amendments part of both the CUP and the design review, or just one resolution?
With
the use
amendments
permit. Just the
as
use
recommended
permit.
by
Okay.
staff. Okay? If someone cares to make...
I'll be happy.
Okay.
I recommend that the commission determine that the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines sections 15301, 15302, and 15303. And number 2, accept the required findings and approve the resolution granting approval of a use permit amendment for the St. Helena Community Church project at 1343 Spring Street, subject to recommended, amended, and restated conditions of approval. And number 3, accept required findings and approve the resolution granting approval of a major design review for the St. Helena Community Church project at 1343 Spring Street, subject to recommended conditions of approval and subject to the amended use permit conditions as proposed by staff.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez. Ms. Gamero, will you tally the votes, please?
Vice Chair Warner,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
Commissioner Furtick,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
and Chair Pont.
Yes. That concludes this item. Thank you. On to item 6, scheduled matters. I don't see any. Item 7, department reports. Director DeRosa.
Yes, thank you. I do have a couple of updates for the commission, starting with our May 20th meeting will be a very full agenda with 5 items. We'll probably have to schedule a break in between, so I just wanted to alert you to, we'll try and bring some snack basket, but but it will be not our normal meeting length, so just a heads up about that. I want to thank Commissioner Furtick, Vice Chair Warner for their work on, as you know, an ad hoc subcommittee was created for Spring Grove Townhome Project. We've made some movement on protocols, and we've given a red line to the city attorney to react to that. And then once we get their comments, we will bring that back to the commission for a discussion item. So maybe as soon as our next meeting, we'll see how that works. And then lastly, you may have heard in the Star, Commissioner Anderson and I were interviewed to talk about housing and the Spring Grove project. And one of the things that we're working on behind the scenes is a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the Council to talk about housing laws, and also invite the community to come and learn, what the rules are. And we have actually reached out to Barbara Katz with Goldfarb and Littman, who is one of the premier law firms, and of course been working with the city attorney. Mr. Walsh knows Barbara, and she's actually done a similar session for the town of Los Gatos when they were going through a lot of, rough patches with infill housing and people just not understanding. And so the way she explains things is in a very straightforward way, a very clear PowerPoint. So we will, it'll be scheduled for August. We haven't confirmed the date yet. And I know Ms. Katz is traveling right now and out of town. But I just wanted to let you know that will be a big thing that we will be promoting to the community and trying to get a lot of community input.
Well, I'm glad it's August, because I am not a big fan of continuing to inform the community that our hands are tied. We've done that. Chair Pont has done a great job that over the years. If we're having a community forum on housing, I do not agree with having the forum be a bunch of lawyers standing up and saying you have no rights. I don't think that is the right approach to take with our community. I'd like to see in advance what we're proposing to do with this August housing forum. So I think the actual approach should be more positive about how you can bring the community together to support appropriate infill housing and affordable housing, even if basically our hands are somewhat tied. So I know other commissioners may have other views, and I also appreciate that. I think Maya, you and Commissioner Anderson have done a great job at kind of providing the balanced view to the editorial board and to others. But boy, if we go out there and simply repeat that, well, we're sorry, we have no rights in St. Helena, therefore we're going to have your lawyer going to give a legal briefing on that, we lose. I think we lose a reputation in the community. The community wants us to bring them together on these things and be able to avoid having to tell the community that they have no rights. That's just my view. So I'd hope that we would have some input as commissioners into exactly what that presentation is.
So I know this is not agendized, so I don't want to have a Brown Act violation, but what I would just, in response, and I hear your comments there, I would just have an open invitation to all of you to individually email me with what you would like to see, particularly what outcomes would you like out of this workshop, what would you like to see, and we can certainly huddle with my internal team and review that.
And that's fine. I also think it might be useful for us as commissioners because I don't want to be misaligned with my fellow commissioners on this. So it might be useful for us to have some sort of noticed public discussion of how we think the community ought to be involved in this issue. Now, I know that's the city council that's part of that and the staff, because I've talked to the city manager about this and talked to some of the city council members about this as well. But I think we have a lot of horsepower around this table on these issues, and it would be useful for us to see if we can be aligned on what we think the key messages should be. If that takes a public meeting or a public workshop, I would be all for it. I'll just throw that out.
I don't know where you want to go with this, but there's a huge amount of sympathy and concern, at least in my estimation, the public in general, of the problem of, no workforce / low-cost housing in town. I think that's something easy to play off of. We need more, we don't have enough. The traffic is bad coming up and down 29 because everybody who's coming to work has to drive up and down 29 to get here, because they can't afford to live in town. I think there's a lot of sympathy for that kind of housing being built in community. So I think you can do both. I think you can tell the public that there's a lot of restrictions on what we get to approve or not. I think at the same time you can tell the public that, we recognize we need to make this happen somehow. And the best way to make this happen is for everybody to bloody well pull in the same direction. and to get the job done. So,
I just like to, I've been commuting a lot, drink a lot of coffee. Can I take a quick bathroom break? Because I've been really stressed out a little bit. Just a minute.
okay.
I'm sorry, this is not an agendized discussion, and I'm getting a little concerned that there's people from the community that probably would like to comment on this, and so we should really, I would just, heed you to please give me your feedback via email, and I will circle back with
I think we're pretty well safe at the level at which...
Yeah, and Maya, my point is, I don't want to just provide email feedback. I would like to provide feedback in person to whoever is planning on the presentation. This is a process question. I'm not talking about a merits on what's said, but I do not want to see a presentation on housing being done without an opportunity for us to have in-person input to it.
Okay, so that might be inviting the city manager and the city attorney as well.
Well, or interested members of the council if they don't form a quorum.
That's all. Thank you.
Fudge, I have to do that whole thing all over again? All right.
By the way, I just want to compliment the staff on the presentation today. I hope you'll pass that along. Tremendous detail,